Hi, I'm Lunel. The day my sister got a limo to prom, my mom took photos like she was sending royalty off to war. 2 days later, they told me to walk, alone, to my own graduation. In the rain, no photos, no ride, not even a name said right on stage. I didn't ask for applause. I just wanted to know if they remembered I existed. But when I spoke up, they called me dramatic. So, what do you do when your family's silence is louder than their love? And what happens when you decide not to stay invisible anymore? The evening breeze slid through the cracks of my window, carrying laughter that wasn't meant for me. I could see them through the curtains, flashes of silver sequins, the shimmer of Zinnia's dress under the porch lights, the way Malis clutched her shoulders like a proud stylist unveiling her masterpiece. Charleston never looked more perfect than it did that night. White-columned homes, manicured hedges, and a sky that couldn't decide if it wanted to rain or cry. My fingers curled around the graduation invitation I had printed at the library. Simple cardstock, nothing fancy, just my name and a date that, apparently, didn't matter to anyone but me. Downstairs, the camera clicks were almost rhythmic. Wayland laughed one of those booming socialite chuckles as he handed Zinnia his watch, his prized heirloom he used to wear to quarterly board meetings. I once asked to borrow it for a student business competition. He said, "Maybe when you're actually running something." That was 2 years ago. Now, all the lights in the house were on, but none pointed toward me. I made my way down the stairs slowly, still clutching the envelope. No one noticed. Zinnia spun in her gown, hair pinned to perfection, her eyes sparkling like she'd already won something. Malis adjusted the straps on her dress and snapped another photo like she was curating content for a luxury lifestyle blog. I cleared my throat. "Mom." She didn't turn. Just waved one hand like I was a fly buzzing near the fruit bowl. "My graduation is this weekend." She finally glanced my way. "Let's get through tonight first, honey. We'll figure something out later, okay?" Wayland didn't even bother to look. "Your sister has guests coming. Don't clutter the moment." I stood there for a beat too long, just long enough for the photographer to raise an eyebrow at me like I was ruining the aesthetic. I turned before anyone could see my face break. Back upstairs, I laid the invitation on my desk next to the dead succulent I forgot to water last semester. My phone buzzed with a reminder about cap and gown pickup. No texts. No RSVP emails. No, "can't wait to see you walk that stage" from family. Downstairs, the limo honked. They were still laughing. As the car pulled away, I watched from my window, Zinnia posing like the star of a teen drama, Malis waving like she was sending off royalty. I had a moment, just a moment, where I wondered what it would feel like to be the one stepping into the car, to be worthy of photos, of a gathering, of effort. The sky cracked open, and the rain began in soft taps. Nothing dramatic, just a slow, rhythmic patter, like the world was trying to whisper something it didn't want to say too loud. I didn't cry. That part of me shut down years ago. Instead, I sat down at my desk and opened a blank Google Doc. Not for a paper, not for a resume, for a letter to myself. Because if no one was going to show up for me, I'd start showing up for myself. Zinnia's prom had a guest list. My graduation didn't even have a ride. But I would walk in the rain, in those cheap heels, in the recycled dress, and if no one clapped, fine. I'd be the applause I needed. By the time I heard the last car door shut that night, the rain was no longer a whisper. It was steady, like a rhythm I'd grown up trying to ignore. It pressed against the windows, slid down the siding, filled every silence inside that house with a quiet truth. I was not the daughter who got the send-off. The next morning, the clouds hadn't moved. Charleston looked like it had been dipped in soot. Gray sky, gray pavement, and a kind of heaviness that hung low even inside our kitchen. I moved through the house like I was trying not to disturb the air. The kettle whistled just enough to cover Melis's voice from the dining room. "Oh, look at this one," she said with a giggle, sliding her phone toward Zinnia. "Your hair looks like it belongs in a Pantene commercial." Zinnia laughed, leaning across the table. "And you can barely even tell I was soaked by the end of the night." I sipped my tea quietly and tried not to flinch. On the screen of her phone, a photo popped up. Zinnia in the rain, holding the family's one good umbrella, the clear-domed one with the scalloped edges, the one I had set by the door the day before, expecting to use. My fingers clenched the mug. "I didn't know you took it," I said flatly. Zinnia shrugged. "You weren't using it, and I couldn't risk the curls." Melis didn't look up. "She was the center of attention, Lunel. These things matter when you're visible." When you're visible. The words hung there, colder than the rain on my sleeves. I stood up, rinsed my cup, and walked upstairs without another word. By the time I reached my room, Melis was already there, hovering near my closet with a plastic garment bag swinging from her arm. "Try this on," she said, unzipping it. "Zinnia wore it last year to the holiday gala. It still looks great." I stared at the shimmering fabric, faintly wrinkled, a few threads pulling at the hemline, glitter that had dulled around the neckline. "You're about the same size as she was back then," she added. I didn't argue. I slipped it on, felt the weight of it droop on my shoulders. The zipper caught halfway. It didn't fit quite right, but no one asked if I felt comfortable. Looking in the mirror, I didn't see myself. I saw a shadow in someone else's reflection. "It'll work," I said. She clapped her hands lightly, already halfway out the door. "Perfect. We won't need to buy anything new. Waste not, want not." The door clicked shut, and I just stood there. I thought about every dance Zinnia had twirled through in fresh dresses, heels she only wore once, flower corsages that wilted in photos but made it onto the family fridge. I thought about my perfect GPA, the leadership award I got last month that no one mentioned at dinner, the early acceptance email I opened alone. No one asked me what I wanted to wear. They just dressed me in what was left. I pulled the zipper back down and hung the dress on the back of the chair. Later, after brushing my hair and trying not to cry over the clumps left in the brush, I went downstairs to grab the umbrella, the same one that had vanished the night before. It was still in the car, crumpled and damp with glitter clinging to the inside. As I reached for it, Zinnia appeared behind me. "Don't take that," she said, her voice sugar-coated but sharp. "I'm meeting someone. I'll only be gone an hour." She didn't wait for an answer. Just grabbed it and walked off in her heels like she owned every sidewalk she stepped on. Back in the house, I typed a message to Melis. "Can you drop me off at the ceremony?" Then deleted it, rewrote it, deleted it again. From the kitchen, her voice floated up the stairs. "She'll be fine. It's just across town. She's not Zinnia." Not Zinnia. I closed the laptop. It wasn't just the kind of morning where you knew it would rain. It was the kind that reminded you it already had, for days. The streets outside were slick and unevenly puddled, and the sky, a cold slab of ash, hadn't budged since the night Zinnia climbed into that limo. I was already dressed when the rest of the house stirred. No need to fuss over my hair. It would fall flat in the mist anyway. No one was waiting with a curling iron for me. Instead, I heard Melis downstairs, directing the stylist like she was managing a red carpet premiere. "Let's do soft waves," she said with that clipped cheer she used in social settings. "Zinnia always looks best with softness around the face. It photographs well." I walked past the living room quietly, my shoes squeaking faintly on the hardwood. They didn't notice me, not even a glance. My sister was surrounded by hairpins and compliments. "Can someone drop me off after the appointment?" I asked once I reached the kitchen, my voice measured. Wayland was buttering a piece of toast, phone cradled between his shoulder and ear. He didn't look up. "Zin's got a schedule. I've got a quarterly call at 9. You can walk, can't you? It's not far." Malis, from the living room, chimed in with that casual dismissal she'd mastered over the years. "It's just drizzle. Be strong, baby. You're not made of sugar." I nodded, mostly to myself. I didn't ask again. After breakfast, I stood by the door waiting for a moment that never came. No one handed me a coat, no umbrella was set aside. When the front door closed behind Zinnia, it took what little warmth there was in the house with it. By the time I reached the corner bus stop, my shoes were soaked through. I sat down on the damp bench and stared at the glass shelter, my reflection blurry in the condensation, a ghost version of myself, umbrella-less and invisible. I pulled out my phone to check the time and saw a new notification. Instagram. Malis had posted, #Throwback Thursday, the caption read. A photo of Zinnia from last year's prom, standing at the top of our stairs in a floor-length gown and crown-like bun. Her caption read, "My forever princess, #proud mom, #gold standard." There was no post for my graduation, no photo of me in the borrowed dress, no caption calling me anything. The raindrops hit the roof of the bus stop harder, or maybe I just heard them louder now. I remembered something, suddenly, from the 5th grade. I had won the spelling bee. I still remember the word, benevolent. Zinnia came late and sat in the back, wearing a new pink scarf. After I won, Malis gave Zinnia a bouquet just for being there. I got a certificate printed on cardstock, not even laminated. That memory had lived in my bones for years, but it was only now it came back in high resolution, because it wasn't new. None of this was. It had just become undeniable. When the bus pulled up, I stepped on, avoiding the eyes of the driver who clearly wondered why I looked like I had already lost something. I took a seat near the back and watched Charleston drift past, muted by the foggy windows. 25 minutes later, I arrived at campus. Other students were pulling up in SUVs, minivans, and a few rented convertibles. Parents were setting up umbrellas, fixing mortarboards, hugging their kids, like this was the moment they had dreamed of since birth. I walked past all of it, my feet squished with each step. I scanned the crowd once, just once, to see if anyone from home had changed their mind. No Malis, no Wayland, no Zinnia. I found my name on the lineup list taped to a table and signed in with a wet pen. The woman behind the table smiled politely. "Family running late?" I smiled back, but it wasn't real. "Something like that." She handed me my robe and a program and went back to chatting with another parent. I walked toward the auditorium doors with my shoulders squared, back straight. If no one was going to see me today, I'd still make sure I saw myself. The applause hadn't died down yet when I reached my seat again, but it wasn't for me. It never had been. The only thing that greeted me was the squish of my wet shoes on the gym floor, and the feeling that the chair beneath me was colder than it should have been. My gown clung to me in all the wrong places, heavy from the rain, and even as I tried to adjust the sleeves discreetly, the fabric stayed limp and sticky against my skin. The girl seated to my right offered me a napkin, one. It was the kind from the concession stand, thin and already damp. She gave me a tight smile, the kind people wear when they're trying to be nice without getting involved. "Thanks," I muttered, though it barely made a difference. The front of my dress looked like I'd been dunked in a fountain. I tried to keep my hands folded neatly in my lap, to keep from drawing more attention to the fact that I looked like I'd gotten caught in a storm no one else had noticed. Maybe because they hadn't. The ceremony moved forward, name after name called out over the speakers. Some got cheers, some had whole families with signs and cowbells. Some were live streaming on phones held high above heads. When my row stood, my stomach clenched so tight it hurt. I took a shallow breath and fixed my eyes on the stage. The announcer, a vice principal I barely knew, squinted at the card in his hand. "Congratulations to Linnell Wayman." There was a pause, a long one. It wasn't silence like the kind you hold out of respect. It was the kind that fills space when people are confused. A few people clapped out of habit. One girl in the row behind whispered, "Didn't know she was adopted." I walked. I didn't correct him. I didn't stop. I didn't even blink. I just stepped forward and up those stairs, each heel click echoing louder in my ears than the applause. When he handed me the folder, he smiled like he'd done something noble. "Proud moment," he said. I gave the smallest nod I could manage without falling apart. My hands were shaking, and I was suddenly very aware of how they looked holding that thin blue folder, cold, soaked fingers clutching something no one else had reached for. No camera flashes, no name shouted, no one rose from their seat. Except, in the far back, just beyond the folding chairs, I saw Calder, my teacher. He didn't wave, just nodded once, like he saw everything that no one else bothered to look at. After the ceremony, I didn't rush out. I waited by the side door, not really expecting anyone. The crowd thinned, then broke apart completely. People huddled in family clusters, taking pictures by the school mascot, by the Congrats Grads sign, under the dripping archway of paper flowers. I stood under the metal awning by the pickup lane. 15 minutes passed. Then Melis's car pulled up. The window rolled down halfway. "You done?" she asked, like I'd come from a dentist appointment, not the one milestone every other student's family had made into a national holiday. I nodded and climbed in, careful not to drip on the seats. I handed her the folder without thinking. She glanced at it, then placed it on the center console. "I'll put this in the trunk so it doesn't get wet," she said. She didn't open it, didn't check the name, didn't notice it was wrong. We didn't talk the rest of the ride home. The windshield wipers clicked back and forth in a lazy rhythm. The road was mostly empty, a few puddles glistening under streetlights, reflections of houses I'd probably never be invited into. At home, I walked up to my room, not bothering to change out of the gown just yet. I sat down at my desk, staring at the empty invitation still pinned to the corkboard. I hadn't thrown it away. Part of me had held out some pathetic sliver of hope that someone might notice it on their own. I reached for my name badge, the one they gave me at check-in. My thumb rubbed across the printed label. Lunell Ward. They'd gotten that part right. 1 out of 2 wasn't bad, I guess. I thought about the moment my name had been misread. How quickly everyone accepted it. No one stood to say, "That's not her." No one blinked. And if my name wasn't worth saying right, what else of me had they gotten wrong? Silence followed me up the stairs that night. It wasn't the peaceful kind. It was the sort that hums in your ears like a warning. The kind that says, "You were heard, but not believed." I sat at the edge of my bed, still dressed from dinner, the sleeves of that same reused gown now creased and limp, much like the version of me I'd been trying to keep together. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I checked it out of habit. School had posted the official graduation album. I tapped the link. The first photo, the full class standing on stage. Zinnia had snuck in somehow, posing beside a cluster of girls in white. The caption called it, "A proud moment for every family." I looked for myself, squinting into the grainy image until I found the edge. There I was, just barely. My face half shadowed, one shoulder cropped out completely. The next photo was worse. A tag list of the students. My name wasn't there, but Zinnia's was. twice. I clicked report. I added a comment to the admin. My name was left out and I was misidentified. Please fix. An hour later, the automated response came in. Thanks for your message. We'll look into it. Nothing else, no apology, no action. Downstairs, the dishwasher beeped. Dishes clinked. Life moved on. The next day, dinner was chicken and rice. Nothing fancy. Just enough to remind everyone we were still a family that ate together. Melis poured wine into her glass, but didn't offer me any. Wayland scrolled his phone between bites, making occasional grunts of acknowledgement. I cleared my throat. During the ceremony, my name was called wrong, I said, voice steady. Wayland didn't look up. Typos happen. Don't make a scene out of it. It wasn't a typo. It was the wrong person, I said. And in the photos, I was miscredited. Zinnia was tagged instead of me. He blinked at me like I was speaking another language. Melis stirred her rice. I emailed the school, I added. No one's responded. That's probably for the best, Melis finally said, quiet but clipped. No need to cause drama. I'm not causing drama. I'm asking to be seen, I replied, carefully. She didn't argue, just took another sip of wine and said, You always have something to correct. The room didn't just go quiet, it flattened. Later that night, a message popped up from Calder. You were the best student I've had. I'm sorry they never saw it. I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to respond, but I didn't. Not because I didn't care, because I cared too much. I knew if I opened my mouth, I'd start pouring and wouldn't know how to stop. A few nights later, Melis planned a dinner to celebrate both girls, her words. The dining room table was set like it was Easter brunch. Linen napkins, candles, her best serving tray. Guests arrived, friends of the family, neighbors, a couple of Wayland's business associates. I wore something simple, neutral, invisible. When it was time for speeches, Melis stood first, smiling with teeth that belonged to a pageant. We're so proud of both our daughters, she began. But Zinnia especially has shown such poise and potential. She's our bright star, always has been. Wayland followed up, lifting his glass like he was at a country club fundraiser. To Zinnia's bright future, and to her image of excellence, we're lucky to have her. They toasted. I didn't. I waited until the glasses were down and the room buzzed with surface chatter. Then I stood, not loud, not dramatic, just present. You should start calling me by my real name, I said, my voice slicing through the casual hum. Before I stopped answering to it, the clinking stopped. Conversations died. No one knew what to say. Zinnia stared at her plate. Melis's hand froze mid-reach for the wine. Wayland glanced toward the patio like he was calculating how fast he could disappear. I didn't need them to respond. Their silence was loud enough. The silence after my words wasn't just awkward, it was armored. It coated the air with that choking heaviness I'd known since childhood, the kind that taught me when to keep quiet and when to disappear. But I didn't sit back down. I let them absorb it, even if they wouldn't acknowledge it. After what felt like a full minute, Melis let out a half laugh, the kind people use to diffuse tension without actually addressing it. Well, I think we all know how stressful these big transitions can be, she said, smoothing her napkin like it was her way out of the moment. Let's not let emotions ruin a good evening. Wayland lifted his wine glass like nothing had happened. To moving forward, he said flatly, before sipping. I placed my fork down gently beside the untouched plate of grilled chicken and lemon potatoes. Moving forward means not pretending, I said. No one responded. Their silence wasn't uncertainty, it was dismissal. After dessert, which tasted like cardboard despite being homemade, I helped carry empty plates to the kitchen. Malis was already wiping down counters, acting like we'd just wrapped up Thanksgiving. "You could have talked to me privately, you know," she said, not looking at me. "You blindsided us." "You've had 18 years of privately," I replied. "I thought it was time to try honestly." She didn't answer. The next morning, I left early for the school's end-of-year awards brunch. Calder had asked me to say a few words, just a 2-minute reflection about perseverance and academic excellence. Something quiet, he had said, something true. I wore a navy blazer over a simple white blouse, professional, not performative. I rehearsed my lines twice in the car before walking into the gymnasium. The crowd was already settled when I arrived. Long tables filled with students, parents, teachers. A microphone stood at the front, clipped to a collapsible podium. Calder nodded at me from across the room with a small thumbs up. My name was listed second on the program. When it was my turn, I stepped up to the mic and took a slow breath. "I want to speak for the ones who sat in the back," I began. "The quiet ones, the kids who never made it into the slideshow, but who always turned their work in on time, who helped others study but weren't invited to the group photo." A few heads turned. Some teachers leaned forward. "I want to say something to anyone who's been told that being quiet means being invisible," I continued. "Because it doesn't. It means you were listening and remembering." That's when it happened. A sharp pop from the speakers. The mic went dead. I tapped it once, then twice. Nothing. The tech assistant fumbled behind the control panel. Calder stood halfway, confused. A murmur spread across the gym. From the audience, Waylon's voice rang out, just loud enough. "Maybe next time, speak louder." People chuckled. I stepped away from the mic and back to my seat. They didn't fix the system until the next student came up. No one apologized. No one offered me a redo. After the event, I lingered near the refreshment table. A few students gave me polite nods. Calder walked over slowly. "That wasn't an accident," he said under his breath. "I'm sorry." I shrugged. "It's all right." I said what I needed to say. That evening, Malis hosted another dinner. Smaller. Just immediate family and 2 of Waylon's golf buddies. She'd sent out evites with the title, "Celebrating Zinnia and Lunel," except it read, "Lunette." I didn't correct her. Dinner was more of the same. Long toasts about Zinnia's social poise, her networking prospects, how she carried the family name well. I waited. Then, when the table finally quieted, I stood again. "I was top of my class," I said evenly. "I earned 3 scholarships. I walked to my graduation alone. In the rain." No one came. Wayland reached for his drink. Malis froze mid-sip. Zinnia fidgeted with her napkin. "I've been silent for 18 years, I continued. "But silence isn't the same as agreement. It never was." Malis's voice cracked. "We didn't know." I looked her straight in the eye. "You didn't ask." This time, I didn't wait for the silence to stretch. I left the room before it had a chance. The next morning, I found the damage waiting for me. Quiet and deliberate. Just like everything else in that house. The mail had already been brought in. The usual circulars sat in a neat stack on the side counter, but a torn envelope stood out, its edges jagged like someone had opened it in a rush. Inside, pieces of a scholarship letter were crumpled and creased, like trash. I didn't need to read the name on the envelope. I already knew it had been addressed to me. Zinnia strolled into the kitchen, barefoot, her coffee mug in one hand and her phone in the other. "Oh," she said casually, not even glancing up. "That was yours. I thought it was mine. You know, college stuff's coming for both of us." She smirked like the confusion was amusing, not cruel. I didn't respond. I took the shredded letter, smoothed it out enough to read the signature line, and tucked it into a folder I kept hidden behind a stack of books in my room. It joined copies of applications, financial aid documents, and every award letter I'd received this year. All the receipts of my effort, the quiet kind no one else in the house had bothered to notice. Later that day, I received an email from the university reminding me to confirm my full ride acceptance. The button to finalize enrollment blinked at the bottom of the screen. No one in my family knew. No one had asked. Downstairs, Malis was setting up the dining room with white linen and brass candlesticks. She called out, "Zinnia, honey, let's go over your outfit for the partnership shoot. Your sponsor sent over options." I muted my laptop screen and closed the tab. In that house, some wins weren't seen as wins unless they looked good in pictures. By late afternoon, the doorbell rang. I glanced through the living room window and saw Osric and Verena, our grandparents, standing at the front porch in their Sunday clothes, holding a small gift bag between them. I opened the door and smiled. "Hi, Grandma, Grandpa." They looked surprised. "Oh, you're here," Verena said, peering past me as if expecting someone else. "We thought you were already off to college." Osric nodded. "Isn't today your send-off party?" "No," I said. "But you're not wrong about who the party's for." Before they could recover, Malis appeared behind me and ushered them inside, cooing with excitement about Zinnia's journey to influence. I stood back and let them pass, watching as they handed the bag off to her like a coronation gift. The rest of the afternoon blurred, posing, laughing, toasting. I drifted in and out of rooms without being asked to join a single photo. That night, after the last guest had left and the dishwasher hummed in the background, I sat on my bed, laptop open, folder spread across the comforter. I scrolled through every file I'd saved, transcripts, recommendations, scholarship letters. The digital proof of who I had been while the rest of the house celebrated who they thought I wasn't. I opened a blank document. Then I messaged Calder. "Would you help me record something?" It was short, simple, honest. He replied 2 minutes later, "Any time." My fingers hovered over the keyboard before I began typing out what I'd say. Not for them, not for a spotlight, but because it was time the world knew who I was. By the time the house went quiet, the damage had already been done, and not to me. I sat on the edge of my bed, laptop glowing in the low light of my room. My fingers moved steadily over the keyboard, the silence no longer suffocating but charged, purposeful. I had gathered every piece of proof, the shredded scholarship letter, the award announcements, the photos that cropped me out, and the ones they tagged with the wrong name. But what mattered more than the receipts was the voice I had decided to use. For the first time, on my terms. Calder came by later that afternoon. He brought his camera, a ring light, and something that surprised me, a quiet respect. He didn't ask questions, didn't offer suggestions. He just set up the frame in the corner of the living room where the lighting was soft and neutral. "You sure?" he asked once everything was ready. I nodded. "I'm done waiting for someone to hand me a mic." He stepped behind the camera and gave me a small thumbs up. The red light blinked on. I began. "My name is Lunell Ward. That's the name I earned, not the one they remember wrong, or tag wrong, or say like it doesn't belong on the list." I held up the reprinted scholarship letter and read aloud. My voice didn't waver. Then I reached for something I hadn't touched in almost 2 years, a sealed envelope from my friend Ava, who passed away in our sophomore year. She'd written it when she knew her time was running short, asking Calder to deliver it when it mattered most. Today mattered. I opened the letter, hands steady now. "Lunell," Ava had written in her rounded handwriting. "I know they won't clap when you walk, so you clap for yourself, clap loud, and don't stop until they turn around. When the camera stopped recording, I didn't cry. I saved the video, uploaded it to my private account, and tagged the school, 3 media outlets, and the university's scholarship office. No commentary, no hashtags, just a caption. This is the name I earned, Lunel. Then I closed my laptop and walked downstairs. By nightfall, the video had already passed 12,000 views. By midnight, it had passed 70,000. The comments came in fast. Classmates I hadn't spoken to in years wrote apologies. A few teachers publicly acknowledged me by name, sharing stories of projects and essays I had poured myself into. One wrote, "We failed her, but she didn't fail herself." Zinnia deleted 3 of her latest posts before midnight. Malis texted around 1 a.m. "We need to talk." I didn't answer. Wayland sent an emoji. A thumbs up. It was almost laughable. The next morning, the university called. Not a secretary, a dean. He said the administration had watched the video and wanted to meet. He didn't talk like he was giving me a favor. He spoke like he was honoring something overdue. A local journalist reached out later that afternoon asking to profile the student who spoke without a mic and still made the world listen. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. Around 4, a delivery truck pulled up to the house. I opened the door and found a white box with a blue ribbon on the porch. A note stuck under the bow. "We see you now. Osric Verena." Inside was a small bouquet of calla lilies, my grandmother's favorite flower, and mine too, though she'd never asked. I set the box down and walked to the back patio. The late summer sky was starting to shift, the first signs of dusk softening the trees. I closed my eyes and breathed. For once, I wasn't waiting to be called. I was answering myself. The rain returned the morning I agreed to meet them. Not a storm, just that persistent Charleston drizzle, thin and steady, like it was trying to cleanse something no one wanted to admit was dirty. We met at a small cafe downtown, the kind with chipped mugs and foggy windows that made everything inside feel softer than it really was. I chose a table near the back, close to the door. I didn't want to stay longer than necessary. They arrived 10 minutes late. Malis walked in first, carrying a bag too nice for the occasion, as if she thought dressing the part could rewrite what had already been said. Wayland followed, no tie, no apology. He looked like a man hoping this was just a misunderstanding he could pay off in silence. We sat. There were no greetings, no "how have you beens," just the sound of rain tapping glass and the low hum of other conversations we weren't part of. Malis started. "I want to say I'm sorry," she said, folding and unfolding her napkin. "We didn't know how much you were hurting." I looked at her, calm. "You didn't need to know. You just had to ask." She blinked. That landed harder than she thought it would. Wayland hadn't spoken until then. He leaned back, arms crossed. "What do you want from us?" he asked, not accusing, just tired, or maybe trying to sound tired to make himself the victim. I sipped my coffee and met his eyes. "Nothing," I said. "I already gave myself what you wouldn't." That ended the conversation more than it continued it. We sat a few more minutes, each of us pretending to finish something: coffee, a thought, a responsibility. Then I stood up. "I hope someday you say my name and actually mean it," I added. Neither of them followed me out. Over the next few weeks, I saw the ripple effect from afar. Zinnia's newest sponsorship post vanished overnight. One of the podcasts she was scheduled to appear on replaced her segment with a feature on intergenerational dismissal and used my video as an example. A writer from that episode reached out to me privately. She said the clip reminded her of the way her own daughter had been treated. "I didn't know until it was too late," she admitted. Thank you for making us look sooner. Messages like that came in often, some from people I knew, others from strangers. Some wanted to say sorry, others just wanted to say, same. One afternoon, a letter arrived from the university. The dean's office had officially added my video to their diversity and identity campaign. My face, my words, and, most importantly, my name would be part of the freshman orientation program. A note from the assistant read, "This time, we'll pronounce it right." Calder got invited to speak at the district's leadership forum. He called me before accepting. "I wouldn't be up there without you," he said. "You gave them something they couldn't unhear." "Just tell the truth," I said. "That's all I ever wanted." Late that week, I found myself walking through the neighborhood park. The rain was back, not heavy, just steady enough to dot my jacket and dampen the tips of my shoes. I didn't rush. I had nowhere to be but inside my own skin. I thought of that day, my graduation, my soaked gown, and my empty seat in the crowd, the silence that came when no one clapped, and yet here I was, upright, moving, still dry underneath the umbrella I held myself. It's not about never getting wet. It's about knowing that now I'd never stand in the storm for nothing again. Back home, I took Ava's letter from the drawer one last time. The paper had softened at the corners, and I'd read it so many times I could have recited it from memory, but I didn't need to. This time, I just looked at her name and smiled. "You were right," I whispered. "I did shine. Not because they saw me, but because I finally saw myself." Sometimes, the people who are supposed to love us the most are the ones who leave the deepest wounds, not by what they say, but by what they don't. This story wasn't just about a forgotten ride or a name mispronounced. It was about reclaiming value in a place that refused to see it. Have you ever had to fight to be seen by your own family? Let me know in the comments. Your voice matters here. And if stories like this resonate with you, don't forget to subscribe. There are more real family stories to come.